One. Welcome back to our next edition of the Property Lines. I'm Chad Stafford. I'm the president of Occidental Management, and proud to and honored to get to sit here today with Dereck Sorrells, who is actually one of our tenants at a couple of our locations here in Wichita, but also a serial entrepreneur. Great person to converse with. I love this because Dereck can talk and really tell a great story, so I won't have to say a lot, which we love. But we are very honored to have him with us today and look forward to the next great edition. So with that, I'll say, and we're back. Property Lines. Dereck, thanks again for being on today. Really, I'd like our listeners to hear, first of all, tell us about your story. Obviously, we know you well because you have Sweet and Saucy down here in Delano. And then you also have Just a Sip out at 13th and Tyler in Northwest Wichita. But I know you have other businesses, but just tell us a little bit about your history and how that all came about for you.
Yeah, it's been one of those things in life where I've always wanted to do something else, and working for someone else has never been what I wanted to do. So, over time I've dabbled a little here and a little there, and it's been interesting as we go along. But Sweet and Saucy was my second business recently after the arcade. And it was just something that I saw as far as something that Wichita kind of lacked, which was something fun and eclectic in Delano. I had looked at that spot for the arcade, and it was too small, but I kept it in my mind. And when I decided to do the candy store, hot sauce store, and sock store, which those all have nothing to do in common, but it's kind of fun together. Yeah. That spot in Delano was perfect for it.
And pro tip, if you have not been to the arcade down at 3rd and George Washington Boulevard.
3rd and Washington, yeah.
If not, it's definitely top 3 pizza places in Wichita. And people don't realize that. I take my kids there all the time because it's affordable, and the pizza and the food are awesome, and so are the people.
Yeah, pizza's great. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, you have to kind of, Wichita's always been interesting as far as the size of the city. I used to always jokingly say, we don't have an Apple store, we don't have a Dave & Buster's, and we don't have a Cheesecake Factory. And now we have a Dave & Buster's, and they announced today the Cheesecake Factory is coming. So the Apple store is the only thing we're lacking in my old story.
Well, that there gives you the next opportunity maybe for you.
No, I'll pass on that for right now.
Well, tell us what inspired you to create the business concepts you created. You talked a little bit about arcade, and I love the story because you've told it to me before about Sweet and Saucy and how all those concepts came together. But just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the arcade started because I had 48 full-size arcade games in my basement, and no one ever really got to play them. So that's when we opened the original location at the arcade, which was down on Meade. But Sweet and Saucy came about. I was working Fortune 500 IT. So I was traveling the world, and I was going into different places, and I was in Austin, Texas. And there was this hot sauce store there called Tears of Joy. And I thought, Wichita needs a hot sauce store. I did the research. I always do the research. And it was, hot sauce sales have been up 30% year over year in the United States. And it was really starting to go. And then the next day I flew to Las Vegas, and I walked into this amazing candy store, and I thought, no, this is what I want to do. And I couldn't decide which one I wanted to do. I couldn't do both. I could only do one. And then I decided to do them both at the same time. And that's where the name Sweet and Saucy came from. My girlfriend came up with that. And it's an interesting, eclectic agglomeration of different products that actually work really well together, because people want something hot and they also love the sweetness. So it really ties together very well.
Yeah. And my kids also love to go to that location as well, because it does have all kinds of unique candies from all over the place. And then I end up, I have my older set of boys really likes spicy stuff. So I got the, what was it called? Butt pucker for a Christmas present for one of my kids. And we all tried it, and tears of joy because it was really hot.
Yeah, there's some really, really hot sauces, and we have regulars that come in just like you would have regulars at a coffee shop or even a soda shop like Just a Sip, and they will try to find the hottest they can find or different flavors because it's not just about heat, it's about flavors. So it's kind of like connoisseurs of wine, how they really like the different flavors in the wine. People definitely love those different flavors in the hot sauce, and that's something that we try to do at Sweet and Saucy is have a variety of things for people to try and taste.
And then the other interesting part about Sweet and Saucy is you've got this incredible sock collection that for sale. And if you haven't been in, please go because it is something to behold. How did that come about with not only looking at candy and then the sauces, but now all of a sudden you got these really cool different types of socks back there?
So the socks was an accident. I'm a firm believer in listen to your customers and do what your customers want because it's not always what you want. And when we first opened Sweet and Saucy, we were looking for some aprons, some fun aprons that guys wear when they're cooking out on the grill with dumb sayings on them and things like that. I just really couldn't find what I wanted, but there was some novelty socks, and my mother always bought novelty socks for me for every holiday. And I thought, well, I'll just find some socks with candy on them and maybe some peppers and things like that. So I bought about 20 pair of socks and put them up on when we first opened. And on the first day, we sold over $100 in socks. And I thought maybe we've got something there. So we went from 20 pair to 50 pair to 100. And now we have over 1,500 different styles of novelty socks.
That's awesome.
And there's way more, but I don't have any more room right now. So, but they're great for everybody. Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, they're perfect for holiday gifts. They're small and lightweight, and they're a lot of fun. They can take any boring outfit that you have to wear, a suit or even scrubs at work, and make them more fun and more interesting.
Yeah, my wife has she has a little Chihuahua, and so I was in there. I think I was in there with my kids, and they were getting some candy and stuff around the holidays. Same thing. And I'm looking at the socks, and there was one with little Chihuahua faces all over it. And so I got her a pair of those. But I do the same. I buy those socks for novelty gifts and fun gifts for around the holidays.
Yeah, it's definitely a safe gift too.
Yeah, that's right. Tell us about, you've got such a great creative energy about what you do. Where did that hospitality, that spark for hospitality and design, where did that all first come into play for you? Because as you mentioned, you have a background in Fortune 500 technology. So I'm just curious about where that spark came from.
I think that really all goes together in different ways. When you're teaching, which is what I did in Fortune 500 IT, part of what you're doing is you're trying to give your student an amazing experience. You want them to not only learn, but you want them to enjoy, and you want them to be able to grow. And as a customer of any store, part of what we want is we want to feel special. We want to be treated well. And part of that is amazing customer service. And I always tell my employees, if there's a problem, just fix the problem. You can fix the problem. It's up to you. If it's not going to cost the company a lot of money and it's going to make the customer happy, absolutely do it. If that little kid drops an ice cream cone outside, don't wait for the mom or dad to come in. Go out and bring that little kid back in and get them another ice cream cone, because that's just the right thing to do. And hospitality is what sets us apart. And it's why people buy local, because they want to support local, but it's because those are people that are their neighbors, their family. They're the people that, their kids go to school with each other. And that's what makes things amazing, is you treat everyone like their family and like they're your neighbors. And that's the hospitality that everybody really wants.
Yeah, really woven into the fabric of the community. And I think that's great. And having been to all of your businesses before, I'd say that is a theme that runs true through all of them. And tell me a little bit about, you and I had a great conversation the other day at one of your locations called 1868. And it's a great place to go have a drink and relax, and with good people. I love it because my dad was in the airline industry, and when you walk in, it's got 4 former first class seats in there, and a bunch of TWA memorabilia, which for those of you younger viewers, Trans World Airlines was the name of, it's now a part of American Airlines. But my father worked for TWA for over 30 years in accounting and finance. But tell me a little bit about, because all those things, you have such a great, the intention of the business and how you draw people in and connect them to it is very interesting to me. Can you expand on that for me a little bit?
Yeah, I think you have to look at what people are interested in, and sometimes it's hard to be on the cutting edge because you can certainly be very wrong with that. Apple, for example, was not the first company with an MP3 player. They just developed the best one, and that's what obviously took off with the iPod. And I think you have to be careful too about asking people what they want. Henry Ford jokingly said, if I asked people what they would have wanted, they would have said a faster horse. So you're not always going to get what the customer's not always going to be able to tell you. But I think if, with Wichita, being in the center of the US, sometimes things start on the East Coast or the West Coast before they start here. And if you can see what's happening and pay attention to that, sometimes you can be on that curve before it actually gets here. And that's kind of what we did with Just a Sip, with the dirty soda shop and the dirty soda craze. We picked that up several years before it actually started. We've been open in for a little over 2 years at our first location, which is the one at 13th and Tyler. And we were looking for spots about 18 months before that. And it just kind of fell into place that the one at 13th and Tyler opened up and we were ready to go.
That's awesome. And again, you mentioned before in all of your different businesses that atmosphere matters as much as the flavor, whether that's candy or hot sauce or Just a Sip or dirty sodas. How do you go about creating that experience? And is it collaborative? Is it just something you come up with? Do you have a team of people you kick things around with? Tell me about that process.
Yeah, I think is one of the things as I've aged. I'm in my mid 50s right now. You have to remember that what you think is interesting and what you think is great is absolutely not what your target audience may think. And I always ask all young entrepreneurs, who is your audience? Because those are the people that you need to cater for, and you don't always know what they want. And for example, the soda shops, the customers are about 75% female. And they're 25 to 44. Well, I'm not the right person to ask what a female that's 25 to 44 is really, what's going to attract them to the product. So that's when you have to, take some ideas that you have and you have to sit down in front of those people and say, tell me what's good. Tell me what's not good. What interests you? What does not interest you? Some of those people can be friends. Some of them can be part of a little focus group that you get together. But I think you have to be willing to not, as I say, not die on that hill. You may have what you think is the greatest idea, and it may be terrible. And sometimes you have to be willing, as they say, when people call your baby ugly, you have to realize sometimes your baby is ugly, and you have to be able to move on from what you think is the greatest idea because it may not be.
Fair point. Very true. What do you, with all these, the multiple businesses that you've started and have been running, what was the biggest learning curve you encountered when getting those started? If there's one in particular,
I think sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So you have to be very, very careful in, especially when you're dealing with government, whether it's a liquor license, whether it's occupancy or zoning on a particular building, how many bathrooms you need. There's many, many things. Licensing for music, you can't just turn on the radio at a business. You have to make sure you're properly licensed to be able to do so. I think the biggest challenge can be when you make a mistake and it's a costly mistake because you didn't check, because you didn't know. I think one of the biggest things you can always do is don't be afraid to ask for help or information, but be careful who you take information from. A Facebook group and somebody gives you information and they live in Utah is not necessarily going to be useful for you if it has to do with food service laws or zoning laws, because they're different everywhere. So just be careful. Take people's advice whenever they give it, but choose to filter what you're filtering in the best way possible for you.
Yeah. The other interesting fact, or at least discussion point, is you've got Sweet and Saucy in Delano, which obviously has had a whole renaissance with the new Equity Bank Park down here. And then you've also got businesses along Douglas Avenue, which is really considered part of the downtown core. And I'm just curious to ask you what your thoughts are on how has the momentum of downtown and some of the businesses and some of the new medical what is that, a regional medical facility that's getting built right now. How has all that worked for you? I mean, what do you think that your businesses contribute to kind of that momentum that's carrying downtown Wichita forward?
Sometimes I feel like Wichita, the Delano, Equity Bank Park, you've got the biomedical center. I feel sometimes it's very much a hurry up and wait situation. COVID slowed a lot of things down.
Right.
And then many things didn't pick up afterwards. And we're still, waiting on those to kind of take off. But we're very much all in on Wichita and what Wichita has to offer. And we think that, when the additional construction around Equity Bank Park, as far as, when the church renovation happens and the hotel and things that are being done down here, we feel that is going to be tremendously strong for everyone in the Delano area. But that rolls over into and actually, starts to encompass what's going on in the biomedical center too, because it's also going to come west and east. And we're a big believer in the downtown area, the old town area, and the continued growth of the core, because that's where there's a lot of young people, a lot of fun, a lot of different. They're not all wanting to live in suburbia. So when they're young and have those new good paying jobs, a lot of them want to live in those apartments downtown, and they want to have things to do that they can walk to. And that's what makes things like, the arcade at 3rd and Washington makes it exciting, and also makes the walkability and the new open container policy that we can have in Delano also makes that very interesting, because it takes us in a direction that many larger cities have gone, like Austin, San Antonio. So it's progress, and it's very exciting.
Well, I know I'm excited. Anytime I can walk around with an adult beverage, some candy, and some hot sauce all in one deal, I'm there. I'm all for it. What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs that are kind of creating something from nothing, or want to turn their passion into a business or businesses, as you've done?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is be careful what you do. Your dream is nobody else's, which is good and bad. I've talked to plenty of people that wanted to start a coffee shop because they loved sitting in this quaint coffee shop, and it was cute, and they loved how they felt, and it made them feel wonderful. And that's great, but that's not always the best reason to start a coffee shop. Being a business owner is very different than being a customer. And you have to make sure you're doing what you're doing for the right reason, because business is in business for basically one reason and one reason only, and that's to make money. That doesn't mean you're not good to your customers. It doesn't mean you're not great to your employees, but you still have to make money. And so you need to make sure that what your dream is can actually make money. Is it fulfilling something that the market needs? Because it doesn't have to be different. Freddy's Frozen Custard is not all that different when you look at it from McDonald's or Burger King or any other burger place, but it is slightly different in a way that attracts people there. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, just kind of change it sometimes. So, write everything down, come up with a basic business plan. Doesn't need to be crazy, but come up with that basic business idea of what you want to do. And then share that with, people that you trust, other people that are in business, and take their advice, listen to them. And that's always a good place, I think, to start.
Yeah. And the skinny fries at Freddy's are my favorite thing.
Skinny
that's a great
fries
point of differentiation between any place else.
I do love the thin smash burger too. Basically, is what it is. I do love that. It's a great idea. But I mean, on that for just another moment, that opened up about 3 miles from where I live. And if you would have told me in 2003 that you were going to open up a burger place, a brand new one at 21st and Tyler in Wichita, Kansas, I would have told you were nuts. And there's over 600 franchise nationwide now, and it's just been amazing. So don't always think that just because somebody else is doing something very similar that you can't tweak that and take that and go big with it.
That's great advice. And speaking of advice, if you could go back to your first few months of opening any of the businesses you have right now and give yourself a tip, what would that tip have been?
Wow, that's tough. I think that you have to remember that in any new business, the first 90 days, you're typically going to be busier than you're ever going to be, because people, especially if it's new in the market, the arcade, when we first opened at the original location, crazy busy for the first 90 days, 120 days, and then it kind of levels off. Same thing at all the other businesses. It's always that way in the beginning. If you've done a little bit of marketing and if you're a little bit different, you have to be ready for the emotional letdown when things kind of level out. And that's the way it kind of is. The other thing I would say is always have a rainy day fund. When COVID happened, I was, the idea that we were going to have a pandemic was on my radar somewhere around alien invasion. It just wasn't a thought. It just,
Right.
that kind of thing has never happened in my life,
Can't plan for it.
or even my parents' life. So you need to make sure that you have as much money set back as you can. Don't spend it. Don't assume that next month is going to be just as good as this month. Next quarter is going to be just as good as this quarter. Have money set back for everything from having to buy a new water heater, having to put in a new air conditioner, to, being able to be shut down for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Because it may happen, it may not. But if you have the money there and you have it available, you're always going to be better off. So plan.
Those are great thoughts. Looking forward here a little bit. Are there any new concepts, new businesses, new ideas, new passions you're coming up with here that you might launch in 2026?
I don't think we're going to launch anything new. I think what we've looked at is what we have now and how do we make it better? How do we take the things that we do have and that are working well for us, and how do we expand them? If we look at even the arcade in a slightly different way, but it's Sweet and Saucy. One of the things that, and Papa's, we co-branded a couple of our locations, Sweet and Saucy and Papa's Ice Cream and Treats. What we're finding is catering and on-site business is really huge. We've done 2 ice cream caterings today. There are places that want us to come out because for their employees or their wedding or their birthday party, everybody does the same thing for the most part. But I can have somebody come out and bring an ice cream cart and serve my customers, my employees, my friends at my birthday party or my wedding. I can have them serve ice cream. That's something different that people aren't doing. So instead of growing by having more locations or different locations, taking what we have and expanding what we have the ability to do with those, that's really what we're focused on, I think, in 26.
Awesome. Very good. Always been a little bit ahead of the curve on, I think, your presentation, your branding, and how you differentiate yourself in the market really sets your businesses apart. Is there any kind of a foundational item that started that, or is it more of the, hey, I trusted people that were advising me on, is this the right thing, and go forward? Is there anything special or unique about how you came out with some of those concepts?
Some of them are really simple, but I've always wanted to, and this can get you in trouble too. I've always wanted to look big. So, some people, you look at Just a Sip and it'll be tagged in a shop local post, and people will say, well, that's not local, it's a franchise. And I think that's because we look like we know what we're doing. Our menus don't look like they were printed on somebody's printer. We have them designed by a professional graphic artist, which happens to be my daughter. So they look like we know what we're doing, and that's a plus and a minus. So you always want to give amazing product, but I think one of the things you have to do is you have to have other people look at what you're doing, because when you look at it for so long, it can look like it makes sense if it's a menu with pricing, or it can you've looked at it for so long, you think that's a great idea, and then you show it to someone else and they have no idea how to understand what you're actually doing. Is this a combo? Does this come with this? How much is it actually? Because it makes sense to you, but it might not make sense to other people. So every time you do any level of iteration, you have to show it to other people and say, does this make sense to you? Would you be able to order off this? And if the answer is no, then you got to make those moves.
Right. And I think about how you were talking about how, the walkability and how you draw in if your customer is, 24 to 44 and a female, and you think about the changing demographics we deal with in business all the time, and we deal with it in real estate all the time. And that like one of the key things I notice is apartment living versus buying a home. I mean, I'm in my 50s, you're in your 50s. I mean, I grew up with you buy a house and
100%.
It becomes an asset. You pay it off. It's worth things. Oftentimes it becomes a very large part of your personal life savings. And today, that's not the case. They want walkable. Is it amenitized? Can I get to some cool spots? Am I surrounded by entertainment? And then I have the flexibility that if I decide I want to move to Austin, I can do that fairly simply without having to sell a house or do anything. It's just a function of being a little bit more transient.
It is. And if you don't understand that customer, because that person is a customer, if you don't understand that customer and what they want, then your marketing for that is going to be completely off. When we opened the arcade, I thought our primary customer was going to be, honestly, old white guys like me. Now, this was 8 years ago, so I was 48 at the time, but I thought that was primarily going to be who the customer was. Well, what I found out was it was all ages, it was all races, it was everybody. It was amazing to me that you'd see 20-somethings on dates that would be in there at a video arcade, and these games weren't even around when they were born. And then you'd see, moms and dads, and they'd be in there with their 12 or 13-year-old saying, this is what it was like when I was a kid. So don't let what you think is your audience control what you do. Try to figure out what your actual audience is. And if that's after you're open and you're making some hiccups along the way, don't be afraid to pivot, because if you're not doing it right, you need to make those changes and embrace that audience. And, we found out at the arcade, the audience is slightly different at our new location, which has alcohol and a kitchen, than our old location that didn't. Because there are some people that if you don't have alcohol, they will not come. I don't care what you're doing. And that's just a different level of person. You have to understand that. But there are also people that are very interested in the video games, and that's all they're interested in. And so you have to be able to do your best to appeal to both.
That's great. And I know when I'm there with my children and I'm playing Space Invaders, and I'm like, now listen, when this came out in 1978 or 79, this was state of the art graphics and just blew your mind with how cool it was. And today, obviously, you've got VR and everything else that my kids get exposed to. But that's a great story. Last thing, where can people follow you, stay updated, and learn more about what you have going on at all of your different businesses?
The best way to do that is you can go to one of our websites. Probably the easiest one is our Just a Sip website. It's justasip.us. So www.justasip.us. You can link to all of our other websites from there, but that's probably the best place to do it. Or you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect with you and chat, and always willing to look over anybody's ideas and give the feedback, both good, bad, and ugly. So always excited to talk to local entrepreneurs and look at what they have to offer.
That's great. And you certainly have a wealth of knowledge and experience to share. So hopefully we have some budding entrepreneurs that will take you up on that. But that's all the time we have today. Dereck, thank you so much for being with us. Your amazing stories and great businesses. And we're honored that you spent some time with us here at the Property Lines today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. Our pleasure.